This video will cover required record keeping for the Produce Safety Rule. Before we get started, let's review how the FDA Produce Safety Rule is laid out. The Food and Drug Administration Produce Safety Rule is one part of the FDA Code of Federal Regulations. This database includes a codification of the general and permanent rules published in the Federal Register by the executive departments and agencies of the federal government. Within 21 Code of Federal Regulations Part 112 are subparts that include general requirements, personnel qualifications and training, health and hygiene, agricultural water, and more. Pay attention to the word must and should. Must indicates that it is required by the Produce Safety Rule. Should indicates suggested good agricultural practices. For example, under 21 CFR 112 Subpart D, Health and Hygiene, Section 112.33 outlines measures you must take to prevent visitors from contaminating covered produce and food contact surfaces. We will reference subparts and sections throughout this presentation. You may print out this presentation and keep it for your records to use anytime you would like. This will be available for viewing on the Idaho State Department of Agriculture and the University of Idaho Extension websites. It's a good idea to have a copy of the Produce Safety Rule with you so you can reference the rule throughout this presentation, and you may pause this video at any time. The Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule is focused on preventing foodborne outbreaks before they occur by taking a proactive approach instead of a reactionary approach to food safety. The Produce Safety Rule requires a few very specific records to be kept and maintained on your farm to satisfy the requirements of this rule. Record-keeping requirements are listed in each subpart of the Produce Safety Rule and under Subpart O, Records. This presentation will cover the specific records you are required to keep under Subpart E, Agricultural Water, Section 112.50. If you're already keeping records for buyers or third-party auditors, and those records contain the same information that's required by the Produce Safety Rule, there's no need to duplicate the records. Simply provide the records you have when requested. If the records you're currently keeping do not include the required information, your current record can be supplemented to include the required information, or new information required by the rule may be kept separately or combined with existing records. I'll be sharing some templates in this presentation that were created by the Produce Safety Alliance that you might consider adopting. The Produce Safety Alliance templates are available on the Produce Safety Alliance website and on the Idaho State Department of Agriculture website. You're not required to use these templates. There are many templates online available for your use. You can also create your own farm-specific template, as long as they meet the requirements listed under Subpart O, Records, Section 112.161. Let's get started. There are 9 different records required under the Agricultural Water Records portion of the rule. Documentation is only required if it applies to your operation, meaning if you are not performing a certain activity on your farm, you do not have to keep records for it. In Section 112.12, FDA defines specific standards established in the rule for which they allow alternatives to be used in certain circumstances. Section 112.12 provides significant flexibility for individual farms to develop alternative standards suitable to their operations, but you must keep scientific data or information you rely on to support the alternative. The FDA does not require you to seek approval prior to establishing and using alternative methods, but you must provide documentation supporting any alternative methods used. The first required record in Section 112.50 is the findings of the inspection of the agricultural water system. The rule requires all agricultural water systems to be inspected at the beginning of the growing season as appropriate, but at least annually. More information on requirements for inspecting water systems is included in Section 112.42. These requirements include adequately maintaining all agricultural water sources to the extent they are under your control. It is important to include the date and time the observation was made, water source or distribution system, observations, and include any corrective actions taken. The corrective actions should be very specific and detailed. The observation in this example are significant geese presence on and over the Southfield Pond, which may lead to contamination of the water. The corrective action was to introduce swan decoys and monitor. So maybe in a week or two, revisit this observation to see if the swan decoys worked. If they worked, include this on the next line with the date, time, source, etc. If the decoys didn't work, you may want to try a different corrective action. The second required water record is results of any analytical tests conducted on agricultural water to comply with the water quality provisions of Subpart E, Agricultural Water. You must keep copies of the water sample results from the lab. The test results must be reviewed, dated, and signed by a supervisor or responsible party within a reasonable time after the records are made. The third record relates to water treatment. If you are treating your water, you must show scientific data or information to support the adequacy of the treatment methods used. Section 112.43A1 and 2 requires that any treatment method used must make the water safe and of adequate sanitary quality for its intended use. And you must deliver any treatment of agricultural water in a manner to ensure that the treated water is consistently safe. The treatment and delivery of agricultural water must meet the water quality criteria for production water and/or post-harvest water as applicable on your operation, as mentioned in Section 112.44. Water treatment options may include chemical methods, physical treatments, including using a pesticide device, and other suitable methods as additional treatment options. The fourth record pertains to the documentation of the results of water treatment monitoring carried out under 112.43b. For example, this may include water used for washing covered produce in dump tanks, flumes, wash tanks, or any water that contacts produce or produce contact surfaces. The specific method for monitoring is operation-specific. This record is only needed if agricultural water is being treated. You are required to monitor any treatment of agricultural water at a frequency adequate to ensure that it meets the water quality criteria for production water and/or post-harvest water as applicable to your operations, and as mentioned in Subpart E, Agricultural Water, Section 112.44. The monitoring frequency will depend greatly on the type of treatment used and what the water is being used for. For example, chlorine is very sensitive to temperature and tends to evaporate into a gas if the water temperature is too high, or if the water temperature is too low, the chlorine may not work as intended. Water that is too cloudy or dirty will cause a sanitizer to bind up, therefore be less effective. It is important to review chemical labels and directions for treatments used. All treatments used must be EPA approved for their intended use. This template illustrates the use of chlorine to treat your water. Records would need to include name and address of the farm, date, time, water pH levels, water temperature, turbidity, chlorine sanitizer level, corrective action if needed, and initials of the person conducting the monitoring. The fifth required water record relates to microbial die-off, which is one of 3 allowable corrective measures if production water does not meet quality criteria. More in-depth information on microbial die-off can be found in Subpart E, Agricultural Water, Section 112.45. If you use microbial die-off as a method to treat your agricultural water, you are required to document scientific data or information you relied upon to support the microbial die-off rate you used between harvest and end of storage to achieve the calculated log reduction of generic E. coli. This may include other activities such as commercial washing. Scientifically valid data means an approach that is based on scientific information, data, or results published in university publications, scientific journals, references, textbooks, or proprietary research. There are many universities and commodity associations that are doing research on microbial die-off rates. If you'd like more information on the current research, we encourage you to reach out to these groups. In the fifth required record, you're asked to provide scientific data or information to support the method you've chosen to show microbial die-off. In the sixth required record, you'll show how you implement the microbial die-off method you've chosen to use. Documentation must include specific time interval or log reduction applied, how the time interval or log reduction was determined, and the dates of corresponding activities, such as the dates of last irrigation and harvest, the dates of harvest and end of storage, and/or the dates of activities such as commercial washing. This record must be reviewed, dated, and signed by a supervisor or responsible party within a reasonable time after the records are made. This is a great worksheet found on the University of California, Davis Western Center for Food Safety website that can help you keep track of the information for requirement number 6. When recording information in the spreadsheet, the required initials and review signatures can be included in the notes line. You also want to add in the name and address of the farm and the crop or field that this record applies to at the top of the form. The 7th agricultural water record is specific to those farms using a public water system as a water source. It is required to keep annual documentation of the results or certificates of compliance from a public water system. These can be obtained from the water municipality or by the lab who conducted the testing. The name and location of the farm may need to be added to this record if it is not included, so you are meeting all requirements listed under Subpart O, Record Keeping. The 8th record relates to alternative methods you may use in lieu of the requirements of Subpart E, Agricultural Water. If you choose any of the alternative methods listed in Section 112.49, you must keep documentation of scientific data or information you relied upon to support any alternative water quality criteria, die-off rates, or sampling frequencies that you establish and use on your farm. Lastly, the 9th required record relates to the accepted water testing methods. There are 9 water testing methods approved by FDA as acceptable for use in testing agricultural water. If you choose to use a method outside of the 9 approved methods, you must have documentation to support any equivalent analytical methods. For a list of the 9 methods approved by FDA and many other useful resources, please visit the Idaho State Department of Agriculture website under the Food Safety Modernization Act page. Remember, all 9 of the agricultural water record-keeping requirements can be found in Section 112.50 of the FDA Produce Safety Rule. In addition to the items that must be listed on all records that we've discussed throughout this video, Subpart O, Records, includes general information about the storage of your records, allowable types of records you keep, and acceptable formats for the records. As a reminder, if you're using records for compliance with other regulations, the records do not need to be duplicated, so long as they contain the information needed for compliance with the Produce Safety Rule. You may need to adjust or supplement your current records to include required items listed in the Produce Safety Rule. Records required by the Produce Safety Rule must be kept as original records. True copies, such as photocopies, pictures, scanned copies, microfilm, microfiche, any other accurate reproductions of the original records, or electronic records. The original records must be completed at the time when the activity is performed, and they must be dated and have the operator's original signature or initials on them. Records must be accurate, legible, clearly readable, and indelible, which means permanent or written in ink. If you make a mistake on a record, simply strike through the mistake with one single indelible line, date and initial it, then legibly write the correct information next to it. Records must be kept for at least 2 years past the date the record was created. All required records must be readily available and accessible for inspection upon request. Off-site storage is permitted if records can be retrieved and provided on-site within 24 hours of a request for review by an inspector. All records obtained in accordance with the Produce Safety Rule are subject to the disclosure requirements under 21 CFR 20 Public Information Act. In summary, record keeping is a critical step in documenting the steps you've taken to reduce food safety risk on the farm and meet the requirements of the Produce Safety Rule. Don't hesitate to contact the Idaho State Department of Agriculture or University of Idaho Extension for more information on record-keeping requirements related to the Produce Safety Rule. Thank you.